Doesn't happen very often. All right. Hey, welcome everyone to the MMA Vivisection with me, your host, Zane Simon, and my co-host, Connor Rebish. We are here to talk about UFC Halifax, a card that I am kind of excited for, despite the fact that it is not very good. I think they're just fighters I like on it, so I'm pretty cool with that, despite the fact that almost every fight on this card could be seriously bad without there are, speaking impartially, there's one fight on this card that I trust implicitly not to suck.
Is it Taleb versus Ponzinibbio?
No, it is not.
Oh, I think that'll be a good one.
I think it could, but
Marshman Santos.
Yeah, that's the only one.
Yeah, I'll say this: it will be consistent with my character to be excited about this card because it's full of middleweights. But boy, middleweights are usually like the I don't watch only B movies. You know what I mean, Zane?
You want a flavor of middleweight, and then a lot of something else. Like middleweight is that cherry on top of a sundae, but you wouldn't eat a whole bowl of maraschino cherries.
Middleweight's like blue cheese. You know what I mean? Like, I don't want a bowl full of blue cheese. I want blue cheese on something, right?
Yeah.
So, bowl full of blue cheese is kind of disgusting. So
it might make you throw up.
Yeah, and that's how I'm feeling about this card. Not to be too much of a downer, but maybe UFC 208 has just lowered the bar for what I'm able to get excited for right now, because that card was I didn't hate it watching it live, but it was a bit of a slog.
It was bad. It was a bad card. I mean, there's a reason that Dana White, who comes out every time after a bad card and is like, no, that was good, or oh, you never know what you're going to get with the UFC, was just like, that card sucked and I can't wait to go home. Like,
yeah, I'm easy to please. I enjoyed the main event. I thought it was a good fight. I thought Silva Brunson was interesting, and I thought Hayes Sasaki was a highlight of the undercard. But it
had moments that on a normal card would have been fine and totally decent fights. But when you have a whole card full of those fights, that's a problem.
It had only one transcendent fight in Poirier Miller and everything else. And looking at the matchmaking here, I think we may very well be in for a similar experience.
Yeah. Without the expectations, because it's not pay-per-view, but with the pacing problems, because
pacing of TV might make it even worse.
Yeah, this is going to be weird because there are a lot of weird fights on here, which could make it fun, but it could just make this whole card brutal.
At some point, the MMA community will come up with some sort of Pink Skies at Night, Sailor's Delight type of rhyme for cards, and it'll have to do with, six fight main card. Show might suck hard. There you go.
There you go. He's a regular wordsmith, folks.
Thank you.
All right, on that note, let's dive straight into the undercard and our first weird bout of the night. Gerald Meerschaert versus Ryan James.
Yeah, this is this is a fight. It's really making me feel thankful that I have that Fight Pass subscription. I'll say that much, because boy, what I wouldn't give for this. It turns out $7. I'll give $7 for this shit. It's fine. Gerald Meerschaert's a very experienced guy. I enjoy watching him fight. Ryan James, I actually enjoyed his fight with Keith Barish. I shouldn't be too down on this. Like, it wasn't a great fight, but if it was on like a legacy fight card, or I suppose it's now RFA. No, LFA. Which one is it? LFA.
I don't know anymore. Every time I have to type it up, I have to look it up. So
it's Legacy Fighting Alliance. It's LFA now. LFA. If you saw that on like the opening bout of an LFA main card, you would be excited. Two dudes who just hit each other with a bunch of punches, basically. Neither of them hit quite hard enough to knock each other out, but both of them were too durable to get hurt. And Ryan James, he did impress me, as he did in the other fights I've seen of his, with his determination. And he's also a decent adapter. He's kind of like a very light Carlos Condit on the feet, where he needs to be hit to learn some lessons, but he does learn those lessons. He will start changing up his approach and piling on more volume if you have early success, even if he's extremely hittable, much more so even than Carlos Condit.
Way more.
Then again, Gerald Meerschaert, not a huge puncher, not really a great volume striker in general. He's an okay striker. He's pretty meat and potatoes in that range. And so James could actually give him some trouble with volume and pressure. But Meerschaert is a solid wrestler and a solid grappler, and his well-roundedness means that and the amount of experience he has means he can mix all of those things up pretty well. So I'm going to go with Meerschaert here, just being the more well-rounded, consistent fighter. But James is solid on the ground. His takedown defense was okay. Granted, Keith Barish's takedowns are pretty ugly. But he also throws a lot of volume and doesn't slow down. So he could give Meerschaert an interesting fight. And maybe I've just sold myself on this one. But maybe, again, it's because I'm easy to please.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing, is that there could be a lot of fights on this card that are fun if you have low standards. And this, like, you know, this could be fun, but it'll also be ugly. Like, there's no way this will not be an ugly fight.
No doubt.
Even at its best, it's just going to be a sloppy ass brawl.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm picking Meerschaert. James is headed towards getting knocked out really badly at some point in his UFC career. It may not be this fight, but it won't take a notably big puncher to do it. The way he holds his head and the way
Keith Barish hit him with whatever Keith Barish's version of a thunderbolt is on a few occasions, and did buckle his legs a few times. So somebody with power is going to take James's head off his shoulders.
Yeah, and that's a big reason just not to pick him in general, is because somebody who stands like that and approaches fighting like that always has a good chance to just lose spectacularly. And then otherwise, like you said, Meerschaert's a decent wrestler, a good grappler. I think his striking is really funky. It's hard for guys to get a beat on. Like, he's really kind of stiff, but he throws with some reasonable combinations at, like, really strange angles. Like, he'll just kind of come in on something. He reminds me a bit of Pantoja in that way.
Sure, yeah. Striking's better than it looks like it should be.
Yeah, where it looks bad, but the fact that he's willing to just go in and do it makes it much more dangerous.
Yeah, that kind of stuff matters for a lot. I've appreciated this kind of stuff ever since I watched Tim Bradley, who is a boxer who is not super technical with most of the fundamentals, but his version of the fundamentals accomplished the right goals.
Yeah.
You know, he knows how to do the right things with the techniques he has, and that's how Meerschaert is.
And himself as well, like, and moving away from strikes and slipping things. So I think that it should be not a comfortable decision, because he's not, you know, he's a small middleweight. He's probably a natural welterweight if he really felt like a dedicated cut. But and he's not a dominating physical force, so it'll be a bit of an ugly fight, but I expect Meerschaert to win it.
He is Gerald Meerschaert's the middleweight version of Joe Duffy, because he can claim that once upon a time he beat the great Sam Alvey. That's his claim to fame.
Oh yes, I'm not going to get too far into that. Okay, Meerschaert is the favorite, opening at -310. Ryan James at +160, now +247. Those odds are a little absurd. Meerschaert is neither, like I say, he's an undersized middleweight, and he's not a finisher, and he's not a dominating force.
He tends to win a lot because he's a gamer, but so is Ryan James. Less experienced one, but James will come to fight.
This should be a +/-200 odds kind of fight.
Sure. I might even say less. Like 180 would be right around the right margin for me.
Yeah. That said, I don't know that it's bettable because it's skewed. Like, I wouldn't bet on James.
I wouldn't bet on this fight at all.
No.
I would only bet on someone much better to beat one of these guys.
All right, and that brings us to our second middleweight bout of the night, Jack Marshman, Thiago Santos. And this is the one fight that on the card that I am sure will be fun and technical enough for people to, not maybe the snobs of the world out there will be like, oh, whatever, it's just two guys slugging each other. But for the rest of us, this is a fight that I can guarantee should be a fun fight because you can be absolutely sure that Jack Marshman is going to come out and throw hands and press throwing hands. And you can be sure that Thiago Santos is going to come out with his kicking game and press his kicking game.
If you were one of those people out there who said, why is Sam Alvey calling out Jack Marshman, then you are not a good MMA fan because that is an amazing matchup. A dude who just throws heat constantly versus a dude who wants to knock people out on the counter is a great fight. And don't blame Sam Alvey for the fact that you don't know who Jack Marshman is because go watch his UFC debut with Magnus Siedenblad and marvel. It was a great fight. Very fun.
Yeah. So this is really putting two different types of pressure strikers in together. And I'm kind of feeling a little like Marshman might pick up his second shocking UFC win. Santos keeps his head really high and straight up when he punches still. And he's still hittable. Spicely cracked him hard a couple of times, just coming in and being willing to close out kicking range and throw over the top. And Marshman will do that with a lot more technique and power behind it than Spicely could manage. And if he does that to drive through Santos's kicking range, then I think he's a much more dangerous inside power boxer. Santos has power inside, but he picks his head up and he gets wild when he boxes inside. He still throws caution to the wind. And I'm not necessarily sure that I trust that his he's gotten a lot more comfortable. His timing has gotten a lot better over time, but I'm not sure that his technical game has otherwise evolved a lot over time in the cage. He looked good dismantling Elias Theodorou, but Theodorou is also the exact opposite of a comfortable striker.
Theodorou's style keeps him at range, which is where you do not want to be with a kicker like Santos.
So I'm going to pick Marshman here. I did not think Marshman would have this kind of UFC run in him, but a big debut upset kind of has him set up for a fight that really fits his style here.
Yeah, I agree. The one drawback, of course, is that Marshman is not the most durable guy in the world. He's certainly willing to walk through punches, but that's kind of part of the problem.
Yeah.
He's been knocked out three or four times.
He's got that Dustin Poirier thing where his prime punching style is going to set him up to get hit really hard.
Yes. But also, like Dustin Poirier, I would say that just indulging in his desire to be aggressive is safer for him, especially in this fight, than it would be to hang out at range and be safe. People have a very linear perception a lot of times of what it means to be a defensively sound fighter. For a guy like Marshman against Thiago Santos, it would be utterly foolish to hang around at range and fight behind a jab and try to pick his spots. He needs to barrel forward and throw volume because, as you said, Thiago Santos is not great defensively, and his boxing remains the weakest area of his stand-up game by far. He's stiff and not necessarily uncomfortable. He has power. That much is for sure. But he's just not that comfortable in the pocket. He wants to back you up with his hands and nail you with kicks. And at that range, he is extremely dangerous. And I kind of hate to predict a third loss in a row for Thiago Santos because I was really enjoying his win streak there. And a third loss might mean he gets cut, which would be a real shame because he's a good addition to this division. He just happens to be, a little matchup dependent. And
he's an action fighter, which means there's a way to beat him, and he gets
also means they should definitely keep him around, right?
Yeah.
Like whether he's getting finished or finishing, that's always a fun fight with Thiago Santos. But Jack Marshman coming forward, throwing punches, as long as he doesn't take a big kick to the liver or the head, I think eventually he will find Santos's chin. And so I'm going to go with like a second round TKO for Jack Marshman.
Yeah. The other factor here is that neither guy is a great defensive wrestler, but both guys are, especially Marshman is probably the better scrambler on
probably
the
better submission threat as well. Santos
yeah.
is a little bit like he's a little bit the middleweight Jermaine Duran to me, where it does seem his ground game is still his biggest weakness.
He's a better offensive wrestler than Marshman, I would say.
Yeah.
But
that could still put him in a bad position.
Yeah. All right, and Marshman is an underdog here, coming in, opening at plus 130, going out to plus 155. Santos is the favorite at minus 170, now out to minus 184. And I would say, even at these odds, Marshman might be worth a bet. He's worth a bet if he continues to climb as the underdog. Let's see, under 1.5 is minus 200, so everybody can see what the potential here is on action. But Marshman by TKO KO is plus 277, and
if you're feeling confident, you could go for that. But honestly, Marshman around plus 160 is not bad.
Yeah, just as an underdog, I think Marshman has a really pretty good shot. I mean, I would even think of him as potentially being a slight favorite in this fight, because I don't see Santos holding him down, and that would be the biggest place. It's kicking him apart at range or getting a takedown and being able to pummel him on the ground, and I don't think he can pummel him on the ground, which means it's up to Marshman to play a range game that isn't really his bag.
Yeah, or landing one good shot. Santos big power, especially in his kicks, but again, Marshman's style just doesn't play into that to make it the most likely possibility. So Santos certainly has a lot of ways he can win this fight.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't put a big bet on Jack Marshman.
No.
I think, to me, he feels like he should be a slight favorite. So as a decent underdog, I say he's worth it.
Yeah, because it's not like Santos is more experienced. Santos is more experienced against UFC competition, but Marshman has a much deeper resume.
Yeah, and he tore through Magnus Siedenblad, who's a good fighter who was on a tear himself. So
yeah.
He's got some momentum.
Definitely.
And Santos definitely does not have momentum right now. He just lost to Eric Spicely in a huge upset.
Huge upset. And that brings us to Aiemann Zahabi versus Reginaldo Vieira.
I didn't even know Firas Zahabi had a brother who was a fighter until last week.
Really?
I had not seen Aiemann Zahabi, which is strange because I'm a big fan of everything Firas does. Like, I follow his videos, and somehow I just missed the news that he had a brother who's a fighter.
Canadian prospects have no tape, as you probably discovered going out and searching for these fights. So that doesn't help. But
everything is just like a video of their last knockout. It's like 3 seconds of the fight. And for Aiemann Zahabi, that was an injury. TKO. Yeah. So it's like, well, great. There's some other stuff. I mean, he looks like a tri-star fighter.
Yep.
He very much looks like a 135-pound Rory McDonald. Crouching sort of forward, front leg heavy stance, prefers to box more than anything else, has some sniping type of kicks. Decent scrambler. He likes, up there with John Danaher and Firas, he is working a lot of that leg lock heavy scrambling game that Firas is very much in love with right now. I'm not sure they've necessarily figured out how to make that work perfectly for MMA just yet. But Firas does have a very good a good philosophy towards the guard game for his fighters. That is a great blanket philosophy, which he calls a 60-second guard, which is that you better get something done in 60 seconds or get back to your feet. You do not play around on your back, which is just a good rule of thumb for most fighters. So Zahabi has all those things: technical, good timing, seems very well trained, does not seem super athletic to me. Not extremely fast, has some good pop in his hands, and that's largely helped by the fact that he's very precise with his punches, good timing and everything, but is not an amazing athlete. I think at bantamweight that will be a problem for him at some point, and it could be a problem for him here against Reginaldo Vieira, who is very Rodrigo Dom-esque, let's say that, but old school Rodrigo Dom, when Dom still kind of knew what he wanted to do in a fight. He's aggressive. He swings crazy chingazos at people's chins, and he goes for takedowns. And he does it okay. Not a ton of craft to it, but he does do it with determination and grit. And that could be a problem because Vieira is probably going to be the significantly stronger man in this fight. So I think it may be difficult for Zahabi in the beginning, but Vieira also tends to wear down, and he leaves way too many openings for somebody who is confident and comfortable in picking their shots. So I think at some point Zahabi is going to start to take over, even if it's not a quick knockout. I think he's going to start to change the momentum around the end of the first round or so in this fight. And so I think it might be a late second round or a third round TKO, or it could just be a decision. But I can't be super confident in Zahabi here. He doesn't look amazing to me as a prospect. So
yeah, I agree that his athletic ceiling does not appear incredibly high, and his striking is also really low output, which Rory made work for him for a while, but I think that also is a very different problem at different weight classes.
Yeah. I mean, he can hopefully just apply the exact same game plan Firas has been working on for Nordine Taleb. And fortunately for Aiemann, he's not fighting Santiago Ponzinibbio, but still it's different at bantamweight, where the fight is faster and most of the good fighters are pretty athletic
and pretty high output.
Yeah.
Like the guys up at the top of that division are often high output strikers.
You're not going to find many Jake Ellenbergers who will just sit on the end of a jab and do nothing for 3 rounds.
No. Yeah, Vieira's really wooden, and I think that's the biggest reason that I'm picking Zahabi here, is that I think Zahabi's going to be too tough to take down. And once Vieira can't take him down, his wrestling's going to get more predictable, and his striking is going to get more disconnected from it. And as that happens, he's going to start to get picked apart. So I'd take Zahabi by decision. I don't think he throws enough to knock out UFC fighters, but he certainly has the accuracy. So it'll be interesting. But it could be a very not fun fight if Vieira just uglies it up and presses him against the fence a lot, and Zahabi keeps a very low output style.
Yeah, if Zahabi adapts correctly, it promises to be a decent style matchup, but possibly one that's more interesting than it is exciting.
Yeah. Odds on that fight: Zahabi is the favorite, opening at -165, now to -221. Vieira is the underdog, +125, now to +181. I feel like there's some name recognition favoritism there. I think Zahabi deserves to be a minor favorite in very close odds, but there's nothing suggested by his level of competition to date that would have me suggesting he should be any kind of big favorite over.
It could be pick'em odds or even Zahabi as an underdog, and I wouldn't really complain.
Exactly. Like, he hasn't faced any much good competition. He's not he doesn't look like the greatest athlete. He's very low output. I wouldn't bet on Reginaldo Vieira, but he definitely, Zahabi does not deserve to be as big a favorite as he is. That brings us to women's strawweight bout: Carla Esparza versus Randa Markos, a fight a lot of people would have liked to see a couple years ago, and a fight that I actually still think will be fun now, but has lost most of the luster it had coming off of Tough.
Yeah, I enjoy both of these women's fights, usually.
Yeah.
They've had a couple stinkers.
Yeah, we've seen, I think fans have this expectation that all the fighters that they see who have potential are going to develop in exactly the way fans want them to develop. Like, oh, Carla Esparza is a really good wrestler. I can't wait until she gets her boxing going and really like gets some power and develops those defensive fundamentals, and she's just going to be an absolute top contender forever because of that. And it's like, that's not necessarily how it works. Like, her boxing fundamentals aren't bad, but her general style may never change much.
She's like Wilson Hayes or like an early Frankie Edgar. Her boxing's pretty good when she knows she can take you down.
Yeah.
It works off of her takedowns or clinch entries very well, but if she's just boxing, she loses heart and a technique starts to go away.
And she doesn't have any of the power that either Hayes or Edgar do.
No.
which has been the secret to their being able to fight like that as well, is that they can really shock people with their
They may not be knockout machines, but they'll crack you and make you think twice if you're not respecting their striking.
Yeah, Esparza does not have that. This fight should favor Esparza pretty heavily to me. Markos is the fighter who is more stuck as far as I'm concerned, because for her game has been built around having decent offensive wrestling and decent punch mechanics, and it's like the expectation was she would shore up around that she would build a better sort of flowy wrestling game and build a better combination striking game around that and build a better defensive game. And those things just have really come in fits and starts. She's shown some better combinations at some points. But her grappling and wrestling is still really spotty, as we saw in her last fight against Courtney Casey, where she just threw herself got thrown into an armbar of her own making almost by a fighter who was willing to get aggressive and engage her. And her striking is still not dominating. Like, she's developed a little more a little more comfort there, but she often kind of gets herself out of position and overextends and doesn't seem to have translated what used to seem like she had some power and like big overhand strikes and things like that. Mm-hmm. That seems to kind of left her game as she's tried to pick up combinations and volume. Like, there's no more ability to really hit people with the kind of power to make them respect her striking.
Yeah, and I think also a lot of it was she really surprised people on tough. And she may be one of those fighters who, like, her innate well-roundedness and willingness kind of makes her a perfect fighter for the circumstances of the Ultimate Fighter, where you don't get a long training camp and you don't get to work with your usual coaches. A lot of people suffer from that. Tisha Torres, for example, really suffered in that environment, but Randa Markos shined. And then she gets into the UFC and it doesn't quite come together the same way.
So the big thing I see here is that Esparza is not going to be, I don't think she's going to be threatened so badly by Markos' striking that she's going to lose heart. And when it gets to wrestling, Carla Esparza is a much better chain wrestler and is just a more consistent chain wrestler. I don't think Markos has the depth of technique to shut Esparza down past the first shot. And that is, that was something obviously that Johny Hendricks could do, but it's not something Juliana Lima could do. And Juliana Lima is actually one of the division's best wrestlers.
Yeah. So. And I think Lima managed to make Esparza look a little worse than she really is because of that strength and wrestling ability.
Yeah. So I think this is going to be a similar matchup to the Juliana Lima fight, frankly, except with a fighter who's a lot less consistent and technical than Lima is.
Yeah. I'm with you. I'm very pattern dependent as a person. I've picked up on this habit myself. And so take this with a grain of salt. This may just be because you said this exact phrase last week in regards to Philippe Nover, but looking at Randa Markos, I see mile wide and a foot deep and a mile wide, however you want to say it.
Inch deep and a mile wide is the
inch
saying.
Deep and a mile wide. Yeah. She can do a lot of things. She can, or at least she can do some things in every phase is probably the best way to say it. Good timing on her right hand, pretty good first level takedown defense, some okay takedowns of her own, a pretty solid scrambler. But it seems to me that in the UFC, she struggled with fighters who are just more focused, who are more specialized. And Carla Esparza is definitely a specialized fighter. She knows what she does well. A couple things about Carla do worry me. She's fought only once a year for the last 4 years, including this, if she doesn't get another fight in 2017, which would seem unlikely for other fighters, but for her, like, fighting in February and then not fighting for 10 months is not out of the question. She's done that quite a bit. So I do wonder a little bit how much desire she has to continue competing. I'm not sure that she really loves fighting all that much. She likes eating like gold covered ice cream sundaes with her friends and hanging out. Like she's there's a little bit at odds with her personality, I think, the way that fighting works compared to how Carla Esparza seems as a person.
Part of that may just be UFC booking right now, honestly, because Tisha Torres didn't fight for 10 months and she was on the phone trying to get a fight booked for 10 months.
Yeah. The UFC basically can just break their contracts without any issues because the fighters have no power. So that's another issue, because every fighter should be getting 2 fights a year if they want them. But I don't know about Carla Esparza. The Lima fight, she looked not great. She would look more tentative than usual, but I'm expecting a little more comfort out of her this time. I mean, on the one hand, it was her first fight after the Joanna and Jacek beatdown, which was by far the worst experience of her career. So she had to come back from that and get her legs back. She was also fighting a big, strong strawweight with good, underrated wrestling. So it was harder for her than it would have been otherwise to get her takedowns. And she'd also had a shoulder injury during the layoff that preceded that fight. So she may have been recovering. Also, she took it on short notice, 3 weeks notice, I think. So there are a lot of factors that could have gone into that fight, not necessarily looking like classic Carla Esparza. And I'm expecting something more like Carla Esparza this time. But the fact that she doesn't fight that often maybe indicates a lack of desire. That does worry me a bit because I think Randa Markos is always down to throw down. I never question her desire to fight. But Carla Esparza, I think the best comparison for her really is like an early career Frankie Edgar. When she gets her game going, she looks really good. People forget she's a top fighter. She was the first strawweight champion for a reason. She easily beat Rose Namajunas. I mean, she really consummately took her apart. And Randa Markos is more like, let's say this way, it's no surprise that she trains with Derrick Cruikshank. That's kind of the mindset she seems to take into the cage. That's sort of well-rounded, but not particularly amazing anywhere, at least against elite competition. So
yeah, it's worth noting that Markos doesn't really have a notable, like anytime she's faced a good athlete, she's lost.
Yeah, which suggests that she really relies on her athleticism to win.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm going with Carla Esparza here. I think it'll be it's either a decision, but I also think a submission could very well happen. Carla Esparza's got a really good wrestler's jiu-jitsu, top position, gets you to react to her strikes, takes your back. So I'm gonna say a second round submission for Carla Esparza. But maybe I'm just trying to fight the feeling of this card by like picking finishes and so many fights.
Maybe.
They're just all going to be decisions.
I'm gonna pick a decision definitely. Esparza is the favorite, opening at -210, now to -281, and Markos opening at +160, now to +227. I think the odds as they stand right now are pretty much right. I think.
Yeah, I have a few too many questions about where Carla Esparza is right now, but
I mean, Markos has only it's been a while since she's won by submission, and that's the only thing she's ever won by when she finishes a fight. And Carla Esparza is not a fighter who gets submitted. Yeah. She's had one submission against Megumi Fuji, submitted her by armbar. That's not a that's not a submission loss to be ashamed of.
No.
So otherwise,
is the best.
Yeah, the idea of Randa Markos taking a decision here just seems a little too long.
Far-fetched.
Yeah, I'm fine with the odds where they are. Over 2.5. If you do believe she's going to get a finish, under 2.5 is +270, but it's women's strawweight. I
wouldn't bet on it.
All right, that brings us to welterweight bout: Nordine Taleb, Santiago Ponzinibbio, and take it away.
Well, I did guess that this was your one fight that you were excited for.
It's not.
And that's because I'm excited for it. I think
I like both. I like the fighters and I like the matchup, but this is a fight I could easily see being 3 rounds of very simmering action between two fighters who are willing to only engage in spots.
Yeah, I suppose. I suppose you could call Ponzinibbio's win over Zach Cummings a simmer. Nobody got hurt really badly or anything, but it was a really good simmer to me. I mean,
well, and Taleb just seems a little more like like, with the I'm on Zahabi thing, a little more on the counter, a little more willing to just kind of wait outside than Cummings is.
Yeah, but the good news is I don't think Ponzinibbio is going to let him.
Yeah, we'll get into it, but yeah. Go ahead.
Ponz's instinct is to pressure, and he didn't do that so much against Zach Cummings, who tried to come forward and stood his ground. But when somebody backs up, I think he's willing to eat up that space and come forward. So we're going to have a guy, I think, a very interesting battle for the control of distance, where Taleb is going to be doing his best to keep Ponzinibbio at range, where he is very effective. He's got a great jab. Deceptively hard right hand. That Eric Silva knockout was some scary shit. He flare flopped Eric Silva with ease, and really his best or his most reliable skill set is his kicking game. He's got very good low kicks, very quick legs, nice footwork, pretty good defensively. When he has the range he wants, Nordine Taleb is a very solid technical fighter. And an okay wrestler too. He can surprise people and shock them with a few steps into the clinch and some nice trips. Santiago Ponzinibbio, his battle for distance will be the opposite. He's going to be trying to close that space and get into at least the fringes of punching range as often as he can. And in that kind of fight, I mean, I was very impressed with the way he looked against Zach Cummings. Zach Cummings, like Ponzinibbio now, is a dark horse in this division. He's a very good fighter that rarely gets the recognition that he's due. He's got some great wins under his belt. He's very well-rounded. He's more dangerous than people think he is. He's got power. He can wrestle. He's a grinder, but an exciting grinder. And Ponzinibbio took him to school with his striking. I mean, he had a little bit of difficulty in a few 10-second bursts, but more or less, he picked Zach Cummings apart, landing laser-guided right hands, good jabs, pressuring. His footwork was astounding, actually. It was really, really nice how well he knew exactly what he wanted to do every time he threw a strike. He knew which direction he was going to move afterwards, and he never stood around in front of Cummings after throwing to be countered, which would have been very dangerous against a guy like Zach Cummings, who's a very good counterpuncher. So I think this will be maybe not like a blowout fight, but this is probably the one that I'm looking forward to the most because it has a good combination of high-level skill and intriguing style matchup. I think most likely Ponzinibbio is going to win because Taleb likes to kick. That is what he's most comfortable doing. Most of his volume consists of kicks. And while he is a solid counterpuncher, he does not want to engage in that range with a puncher like Ponzinibbio. So I'm going to say Ponzinibbio by unanimous decision. I think Taleb's tough enough to withstand it, get his range back, and find some openings. But ultimately, I think Ponzinibbio is going to play a nice middle ground between pressure and pot shotting.
Yeah, I see the fight pretty similarly. And I'm not saying I'm not excited about this. I just can see a world where it ends up with this very, Taleb keeping Ponzinibbio at bay a bit and Ponzinibbio keeping Taleb from throwing, and you just get two guys who are in the classic when Joe Rogan goes into the chess match talk because two strikers aren't doing much.
Yeah, I look forward to those fights though. I mean, I know you do. Totally down to see a technical kickboxing battle, especially with two guys who can finish each other and will try to do so.
I'm into those fights when they come on really exciting cards that have had a lot of other fun action fights.
Sure.
In this card, it doesn't make it a card anchoring fight for me in the way that Marshman Santos does, where I'm like, yeah, I know this is going to be a throwdown fight.
Yeah, that's fair. I mean, if it was UFC 208, then probably even a fight as interesting as Dillashaw Sunsao would not have felt that amazing because the rest of the card around it was so slow.
Exactly. So that's my only worry. It's not that this is going to be a bad fight, that it's just going to not do enough to energize the card. Otherwise, I do think that Taleb is just, even seeing the Eric Silva KO, there's just a little too much Francis Carmont in Nordine Taleb for my liking. A little too much of the, if he can catch you with just that right strike, he's a scary striker. But if you can really push him and bully him and make him show a deep striking game, that depth does not come across. And I think that Ponzinibbio can really take advantage of that. The biggest problem for Ponzinibbio has tended to be fighters that are clearly better athletes, just like lots and lots faster than him. And I don't think that Nordine Taleb is a lot faster than Ponzinibbio. So I think that Taleb can close down the middle distances and strike comfortably in the pocket. That's something he's shown really well, and that gives him a big edge here. I think that Ponzinibbio can be that comfortable pocket striker in front of Taleb without backing down for Taleb's counters, and that won't let Taleb off the hook. So I got to pick Ponzinibbio as well. Ponzinibbio is the favorite, opening at -265 now to -380. Taleb is the underdog, +185 now to opening at +185 now to +293. Those odds are definitely skewed to my liking. Ponzinibbio has shown that he's continuing to evolve his kickboxing game. He's got power. He's not a bad wrestler. But I still think that guys like Lorenz Larkin are Ponzinibbio's ceiling. Like, there's just going to be a speed differential at some point, and technical strikers that are a lot faster than him can catch him. And that does not make me 100% comfortable that he just goes out there and mows over Nordine Taleb, even though I think he absolutely should beat him.
Yeah, he's also a little too, for a guy who likes to come forward and throw punches, he relies a little too much on parrying for my liking. Not a ton of really good slips and counters in his arsenal. So if he's busying his hands trying to parry everything that comes his way, Taleb could keep him at bay with the punches.
Which is why I think, too, that when he gets guys that are a lot faster than him, then he's just going to keep hitting a wall.
Yeah.
Taleb may not. I don't think Taleb's a lot faster than him, but I do think that Taleb's shown that he has enough power and counter striking that I wouldn't just be like, Ponzinibbio at -400. That seems.
Yeah, I'm not excited about it because it looks like a blowout. I'm excited about it because it'll be a battle. So
yeah, it should be. He should be -200, half that. That seems fair. That seems like he's a clear favorite. I expect him to win, but I expect Taleb to be tough throughout. Let's see. Under a round and a half is +170. Both guys have a history of KOs, so maybe, but this doesn't feel like that kind of fight to me.
Yeah, I think we're gonna have more of a simmer, as you said.
Yeah. So Taleb wins by KO TKO is +1150.
Holy shit! I mean, I still wouldn't bet on it, but that's a crazy line right there.
Yeah,
1150.
Ponzinibbio has been knocked out twice in his career.
Yeah, he's a bit of a glass cannon, especially for guys who are fast. And Taleb's not crazy explosive, but he has quick hands.
Yeah, there's a chance. It is a better than 1150 chance.
Yeah, I'm not going to bet on that.
No, don't bet on it. Yeah, okay.
Don't bet on anything. We're not good bettors. Don't bet on anything.
Yeah, don't bet on anything on our say so. Never bet, people. Gambling is a sin.
That's right. It's a venal sin, as Kid Nate is fond of saying.
Indeed. That brings us to Alessandro Ricci, Paul Felder on the main card. And Paul Felder is fighting the Canadian Paul Felder.
Yeah. I think they're two very similar fighters. It's kind of weird.
Yeah. I'm picking Felder here because I think, he's had more experience in the UFC to continually have to confront and try and understand the problems in his game and try to fix them.
Whether he succeeded in that front or not entirely is certainly up.
Yeah, he may not be succeeding, but he at least, Alessandro Ricci has hit that wall for the first time in his first fight, and I don't necessarily the problems for Ricci are that even at range, even given the type of fight he wants, he's a very, very reluctant defensive striker. He is always in favor of giving up the good in the favor of the perfect. in favor of the perfect. And it means that it's like, wow, yeah, you've got a little bit of power. He's a very clean, technical fighter, but he does not pull the trigger nearly often enough. And
like
he's
all counter knees.
Yeah. And for Felder, he's got some of that problem, but he's a lot better at pulling the trigger if you give him time and space. If you just set him out at range in front of you, he can pull out some fun shit that'll surprise people. And he's done so with a reasonable degree of success. And he's also, beyond that, a really, really good grappler. Like, he's not like some amazing world-beating black belt, but he's got a great natural feeling for grappling, especially his back take game. And that's kind of his ace in the hole. Is it even if somebody's really pressuring him and kind of overwhelming him on the feet as a striker, he can suck them into a grappling game where he'll win the scrambles.
Yeah,
that's how he ended up beating Darren Cruikshank. That's a lot of what ended up going well for him against Jason Sago, even in his debut, and it's just been his sort of his back door.
Sorry about that. He's got some decent wrestling too, so it's not like he has to wait for the other guy to grapple him.
Yeah. And Ricci, I haven't really seen that out of. I think he just ends up being really uncomfortable if you force him to grapple. He's not the easiest guy to take down because he's so defensively minded, but there's just not enough danger in his game to have me picking him over Felder here.
Yeah, he also was ultimately taken down quite a few times by Jeremy Kennedy, who was a featherweight. So who was much smaller than him. Yeah, Ricci. I think the comparison to Felder is a strong one because he is a good, well-rounded fighter. He's pretty competent with everything that he wants to do. It's just that the things that he wants to do don't play particularly well against the things that Felder wants to do. Even if they're using a lot of the same techniques and their fighting background makes them look similar on the surface, Ricci is going to be backing up and Felder's going to be coming forward. We know that. Yeah. Felder likes to pressure. He doesn't have great distance management. I think a big problem for Felder has been his inability or his refusal to just touch people and not just throw heat at them. So good, experienced fighters don't tend to get hit as much as he wants them to, and they don't walk into his counters when they're comfortable with their striking because he's not like pawing. If he could just paw with his jab and feint a little more, he'd be so much more effective at landing his shots. Just get his range and then let the hammer drop. But with Ricci, who throws less volume and is more defensively minded, he's at least going to be in the vulnerable position of being against the fence, which makes it a lot easier for Felder to land those big shots. And then, Paul Felder, probably more powerful, has the wrestling advantage. I just think he's just a little more specialized. He has a little more focus about how he wants to win a fight. And so I think he's going to basically take this one over, even if it will be at times competitive, because Ricci is a decent counter striker and a pretty good defensive wrestler.
It also doesn't help for Ricci that he's really most comfortable with his striking in the pocket and clinch.
Yeah.
As a Muay Thai fighter, like he wants short elbows and clinch knees, and he's not a overpowering physical force inside.
Yeah.
So it's kind of the Dan Hooker problem. Sure. Where Hooker is like really at his best when he can get you right in front of him into a close scrap, and then he fights somebody like Maximo Blanco, just pushes him and then hits him. And it's just like, I'm not going to let you get that close to me. I don't have to, or if you do, I can just grab you and throw you down.
Yeah, and Felder also has a very good security blanket in that he is extremely tough.
Yeah,
it took a horrible cut from Francisco Trinaldo to stop him, and at no point in that fight was he even rocked by the left hands that Trinaldo was landing. He can take a serious beating. Also, the body kicks that Edson Barboza was hitting him with, like he can take a shot and not really change his approach. He gets frustrated, but if you're hoping to hurt Paul Felder, it's very, very difficult.
Yeah, definitely. Odds on this fight: Felder opened at -285, now to -374. Ricci opened at +205, now to +294. Let's see. Over 2.5, under 2.5 is plus 225. I mean, Felder doesn't necessarily always fight the right way to get finishes.
And I think he needs to counter, and I'm not sure if Ricci's going to be aggressive enough to get finished.
Yeah. So there's a problem there. I'm trying to think, where could you bet on this fight? Let me look at Ricci's record real quick, because Ricci's only lost decisions too, so it's not like he's got a big problem with getting submitted or that he's not tough himself.
He's tough and he plays safe. So yeah, I think it's probably, sometimes the lines are just accurate, and it doesn't, that means it's not a bettable fight.
Yeah, these lines look accurate. So that brings us to Sara McMann versus Gina Mazany.
Weird fight. Gina Mazany didn't make it on to the Ultimate Fighter. She's filling in now on short notice because the better fight of McMann versus Carmouche fell through.
I loved that fight. I asked for it the moment I put that in my fights to make piece. The moment both of them won, it's just like, this fight needs to happen.
It's a good pick. It may not have been an amazingly exciting fight, but it makes absolute sense for both of those women in this division right now.
Yeah.
So now Sara McMann basically gets a gimme, and I was cautioned recently by a fan, I suppose I'll call him, on Reddit, about being a little too. He was a fan. He said he listened to my stuff and he watched our show and stuff like that, but was cautioned about being too absolute, right? I was very absolute in picking against you and picking against Yuta Sasaki, for example, but it's because sometimes, like, I can't be right all the time, and sometimes fighters show you things you've never seen from them before. Yuta Sasaki was not a guy who had a laser accurate right hand. He wasn't a Japanese Diaz brother before last weekend.
Yeah.
And so, sometimes you're going to be surprised, and it's not very good analysis if I sit here and just say, well, Gina Mazany could beat Sara. Like, that's not useful to you. No. You got to draw a line somewhere. Gina Mazany is not very good. I will just say that.
I mean, just a second. I want to let people in on a little secret, because you've opened the door to it, and I feel like I should. And this fight sucks. There is no fun in analysis or doing a show if you're not going to actually have, like, good, strong opinions about fights. Like,
you just got to pull the trigger. You just got to.
Yeah, I'm happy to be wrong. I'm happy to be surprised. I would much rather be surprised about being wrong than hedge myself to the point of always being a little bit right. Which
the surer I am about a prediction, the more pleased I am to be wrong, because it means I get to be more surprised.
It's no fun to not be pretty absolute about this kind of thing, and it doesn't make sense to do a show if you're not. If you don't feel fairly certain. Like, you don't want people who don't feel certain. So that's the little secret about doing this show, is that it's really dumb of us to do a show where we just continually are like, I don't know, maybe this could happen and maybe that could happen. Like, we might as well just not do a show at that point. Well, anything could happen in any fight, everybody. The world is full of endless possibilities.
That's why we watch fighting. Let's just say that in 10 different ways for each fight. Well, let me be as certain as I can. I'll muster up as much certainty as I can here. Sara McMann is getting a tune-up fight here against Gina Mazany, or a stay busy fight, because she doesn't need to tune up. She's on a win streak.
Yep.
And Gina Mazany doesn't really seem to have much idea of what she wants to do in most fights. She has never fought a winning fighter and won. She's got 4 professional wins, but every single one of them was against a debuting fighter. And
I don't believe she's even fought more than once in the same year.
No, super spread out record. She's still fairly young. I think she's 27, but she's fought.
Yeah, she's 28. Yeah,
28. So yeah, but she like started first in like 2008 or something like that, and it's just fought like once every 2 years here and there. I think she does professional wrestling with her husband on the side. She may have a little, like, independent wrestling gig. So, good for Gina Mazany. She wants to fight. She wants to do pro wrestling, whatever. That's fine. I'm not disparaging her, but Sara McMann's a good fighter. And it's been a little too easy to forget that Sara McMann's a good fighter, because she had 3 really bad losses, but they were to Miesha Tate, Ronda Rousey, and Amanda Nunes, who are all current or future bantamweight champions at the time McMann fought them. So that's a tough lineup. And against lesser fighters, even fighters who are not bad, like Alexis Davis, she's looked pretty good and beaten them. And she's gotten her confidence back, I think, as well. In throwing her hands, she was a lot more willing to exchange strikes with Davis, landed some really good corkers. She's got power in her hands. She's pretty fast. Nice setups for her takedowns. She's still confusingly uncomfortable on the ground. She once she realized that she was strong and she could play a top game against Alexis Davis, she was great. Once she was not in the guard, she looked really comfortable. She passed to an arm triangle with ease. Great control, but stuck in Alexis Davis's guard, her body language is very strange. She just sort of ducks her head down and eats 19 elbows and then tells her corner she can't feel half of her face. And that kind of stuff worries me. Like, she doesn't have the confidence in that area of her game, even though she should, because she is a physical specimen. Like, she could do a lot of things wrong on the ground and still be okay if she just had confidence in being aggressive. But she's getting there. She's getting there. She's old for a fighter, so she doesn't have a ton of time. But
all right, let's not give a whole rundown of Sam McMahon's career over this fight. It's not worth it.
You're right. She's gonna either knock out or take down and then submit Gina Mazany.
Yeah,
so I'm going with knockout. I think she's gonna work her hands a little bit because she has the freedom to do so. I think she's gonna knock her out in the first round.
Yeah, Mazany, I think the big thing I see is that she is not nearly comfortable enough striking at range to take Sara McMann out of her element in any way. She will throw 2 or 3 punches while running face forward into the clinch and then try to bully her opponent from there forward. And if she's not...
She was also a strawweight, right?
Was she?
She was on strawweight season of Tough and she got destroyed.
No, she was not. She was on the season with Juliana Pena. She was on
Juliana Pena on the bantamweight season?
Yeah, like 10 years ago, whenever they first made the bantamweight division and did Tough around it.
I see. I thought Pena got on in the strawweight one.
What? Are you kidding?
Pena's a strawweight.
Pena came up with Misha Tate and Ronda Rousey as like the whole season.
Not Pena. I'm sorry. Penne. Juliana Penne.
Did she fight Penne?
I think so.
What's
Penne's first name? Jessica Penne?
Yeah. Mike, God damn it. Why do you do this to me?
We're spending way too much time on this.
Oh, no, she fought Juliana Pena.
Okay, sorry. I got confused.
On Tough.
I got confused.
God damn you. All right. Yeah, so she fights like a bully, and when she has the physical advantage, that's great. And she does on the regional circuit because she's fighting in Alaska and it's the regionals. But that is not going to happen against Sara McMann. Sara McMann is the favorite opening at -380, now out to -524. And Mazany at +260, now to +393. I don't think those odds can get wide enough, frankly. Mazany just does not look like she has anything other than all the technical parts of her game I saw. Like, she doesn't look like she doesn't know what she's doing, but it's all built around her having a physical advantage. It's all built around her being bigger and being able to just hulk her opponent and do what she wants in the cage. And I don't see that happening here. So I don't see any reason that the odds can't get wider there. If McMann loses, it would be an absolutely shocking upset. Under 2.5 rounds on that note is +165. So McMahon's looking better lately. I don't know. She's never been the greatest finisher in her life, but certainly getting a finish over Alexis Davis is a good sign that she might be able to. I mean, that would be about the only thing I could see in this fight being worth a chance.
Are we looking at Davis by finish?
Dave, under 2.5 on that.
I don't think, honestly, the reason you usually take that bet is because you give yourself a little bit of forgiveness in case the other person wins.
Yeah.
If you're going to bet on this one, why bet? Why bet with the thought of
McMann inside the distance at +160?
Yeah, well, I guess it's the same as under 2.5 rounds, so you may as well do that then.
Yeah. So
you The only way to get more value is to pick McMann by a more specific method, and that's a little riskier.
By TKO, which would be 350, or submission, which would be 375, but either of those are as likely as
they're
the
both
other.
viable, but that's why I wouldn't bet either one, because she can basically do what she wants in this fight.
Yeah. That brings us to a middleweight bout: Elias Theodorou versus Cezar Ferreira. I don't know. I like Elias Theodorou, so
everyone does. He's Twitter's favorite Disney prince.
Yeah, he's an awesome dude. He's a really nice guy. He's just seems like a cool dude. He's been friendly, nothing but friendly. If the Cezar Ferreira that fought Jack Hermanson shows up, I think he takes this fight.
If the Cezar Ferreira who's been fighting his past 3 fights shows up, I mean, Cezar Ferreira, he wasn't supposed to be that good after he started to get knocked out, and he has found a way to make it work. Cezar Ferreira is the comeback middleweight of the year.
Yeah, it's been a slow thing where Oluwale Bambos hurt him early, and then Cezar Ferreira was able to battle back. Anthony Smith, he just kind of wrestled into a decision. And then Jack Hermanson, he just had his number dialed every second of that fight.
Very surprising to me, yeah.
Like, it's been a clear improvement of him understanding what's going wrong and then fixing his whole fight game around that over time to become a different, much better fighter.
But also you could say that that's an example of just good game planning too, not just growth, but it makes sense to do nothing but wrestle Oluwale Bambos because he's going to come after you and throw tons of heat. Jack Hermanson a little more methodical, so you can pick your shots and strike with him a bit and wait to set up the takedown. So they were both very smart fights for me from Ferreira. He looked really good in both of them.
And I think Elias Theodorou is unfortunately too game plannable at this point in his career still. He's a decent enough range striker when he gets the chance, but mostly Theodorou, the center of his game, is still being a bully, is being more physical and being in better shape for longer, so that when he scraps and he throws from range, he can outmaneuver you, he can be faster, he can be first, and he can out scramble. And I don't think he's just a better athlete than Ferreira. Ferreira's always been a good athlete. Athleticism has never been his problem.
He's probably bigger too. I mean, he's a big dude.
Yeah. His problem has been being chinny and not realizing he was chinny and relying on his ability to mix it up and strike with people. He's figured that out now.
Yeah, and also probably because he came up under Vitor Belfort, and I think he used to spar like a maniac in the gym.
Yep.
And he said he stopped doing that now that he's at MMA Masters, and it seems to be working great for him.
Yeah. So Ferreira, I think Theodorou, even if Cezar Ferreira were chinny and just fought chinny, Theodorou is not a knockout machine. He does not strike in a way that sets him up to knockout. He's too wild. He's too inconsistent. He doesn't have enough follow-up on his strikes. He doesn't throw combinations. He's not accurate enough. And I got to pick Ferreira here to be the more technically patient fighter everywhere, to be a better wrestler, a better grappler, and a better striker.
Yeah. Theodorou is the perfect dude to beat Sam Alvey, and he's exactly the wrong dude to beat Cezar Ferreira. Because what you need for Cezar Ferreira is, A, you need some good takedown defense or some really good scrambling. B, you need some good boxing. You need to have power in your hands. You need to be confident throwing and trading punches in the pocket. And Elias doesn't do either of those. He's really kind of a kick-heavy striker. Lots of weird frames and a lot of posing at range, sort of giving you looks and then peppering you with a kick that doesn't hurt too much and then moving away and rinse and repeat. He's very tough, so Ferreira's almost certainly not going to hurt him badly with a punch, because he took some mean shots from Thiago Santos throughout that fight and just kept coming. He's a very tough dude. A lot of heart. But let me give you some fight metric numbers here from my Sherdog preview. Ferreira shoots 3.8 times per 15 minutes, which doesn't sound like a super high number, but he finishes 69% of his takedowns, which is a very, very good rate. Some really good wrestlers don't have numbers like that. His timing is very good.
Basically, means he gets the takedown around.
Basically, yeah. And it also means usually when he gets the takedown, you stay down. His top control is really solid, and he's very technical and clean with his takedown, his entries, and the way he finishes them. He gets about 2.6 takedowns per fight, and a lot of those aren't full 3-round fights because he does get submissions and finishes, and he also gets knocked out some. Theodorou's takedown defense is 41%. Not a great number against Ferreira, who can basically choose to pick his shots, counterpunch, and strike a pot shot Theodorou as he kicks, or take him down off of those kicks. I just think Theodorou's game is pretty much the worst one possible to have a good chance of beating Ferreira, who's really improving and gaining back the confidence that he was losing after all those knockout losses. So,
unfortunately, too, if the Thiago Santos fight showed anything, it's that when Theodorou's not getting the fight he wants, he gets tired.
Yeah.
Like, if he's getting out-grappled, if he's getting pushed around, he starts to get really tired.
Yeah, and chin may be a worse problem than that, but stamina does not seem to be an issue with Ferreira.
Yeah.
Again, can match Theodorou, if not exceed him as far as athleticism is concerned. So yeah, I think Ferreira is going to get, I think he might get a decision. I don't think he's going to finish Theodorou, who's a pretty good scrambler, pretty good defensively on the ground, but I think he's going to control him a lot and land some nice, impressive, flashy looking punches on the feet.
Yep. It's my feeling as well. I mean, it could be that Theodorou will land some snapping front kick and knock him out, but that's the only avenue I see is like a flash KO.
There would have to be a lot of luck involved.
Yeah.
I think so.
Ferreira opened at plus 110, now to minus 122. Theodorou at -1, opened at minus 150, now to minus 101. I think Ferreira's worth something at those odds. I think that's a little close for how bad a style matchup this is.
He's definitely worth something. I mean, I think this is one of the easier picks on the card. Not that Theodorou is better than some of the other guys that I felt like easier picks, but the style matchup is pretty nightmarish for him.
Like, Jack Hermanson was not a good style matchup for Cezar Ferreira, and Ferreira took him apart.
Yeah, he game planned perfectly for him. So yeah, I think Theodorou is as close to certain as I can be. He's pretty much definitely going to lose.
Yeah.
Hurts to say. Love you, Elias. You're a great guy.
We do.
Fun, but
I hate picking against him. I want to see him win. I would love it if he wins. So I will be super excited if he wins because I picked against him.
Yeah, but again, I will only be that excited because I'm pretty damn sure he's going to lose.
Exactly. All right. That brings us to a featherweight bout. Sam Sicilia, Gavin Tucker. I hate trying to break this fight down.
Yes. Do you want me to help you out? I have some numbers that might help you discuss this.
No, I mean, I can discuss it first.
Okay.
And then we'll get to your numbers. But Sam Sicilia is a problem because he's got good power. He's got decent punching mechanics. I know you're going to disagree. You might disagree with that.
He's all right.
Decent natural punching mechanics.
Mm-hmm. Good timing, good sense of distance.
Then he's got like 7 or 8 years of Sikjitsu striking training to go along with that. Which is just, and it only seems to be getting worse lately. That's the worst part about it, is that I think it's the kind of thing with like I talked about with Abel Trujillo and Henry Hooft, about how over time a coach can devolve. And I was right about that. You got to give me some credit for that.
What was that? What were you right about?
Abel Trujillo, Henry Hooft, and that Abel Trujillo's recent fight with like no confidence in his striking anymore.
Yeah. You were dead on.
I'm kind of seeing some of that with Sicilia too over time. Like, it's just slowly, like, the dude who knocked out Akira Corazani and Godofredo Pepe is just slowly inching away to becoming this fighter who is looking for ways not to get knocked out standing. It's less bad than Hooft because I think he has a lot more faith in his corner and his training.
I mean, it's not bad. He still threw down with
he still threw down with Gabriel Benitez and Duho Choi.
Yeah.
So It's less bad, but I think like the technique just seems to be getting even like it's just less. I guess for him maybe it's just less measured. Even like it's less constructive,
more desperate.
And Gavin Tucker in the flashes I have seen looks decent. He looks like a really solid athlete with a well-defined striking game that is built on a kickboxing combination game that may be nicely constructed. But we are talking flashes, and we are talking, Gavin Tucker had one fight recently, and after that, let's see, he had one fight in 2016, and before that, one fight in 2015, and then no fights for 2 years before that. And personally, I hate looking at tape that's older than 2 years for fighters. I don't think it helps. I think it just gives you a weird, outdated version of what fighters do. And then you get to their fight and you're like, oh my God, I watched this tape from 5 years ago and I didn't think he could wrestle. It's like,
especially for fighters like Tucker who are still a work in progress, still a young fighter.
Tucker can absolutely beat Sicilia because the way Sicilia is fighting these days on his feet, he looks desperate and he opens himself up and he can be cracked and cracked badly. His striking is not constructively built around his power and his mechanics. It's just not. And it probably never will be. Sicilia is also a pretty decent scrambling wrestler and grappler. As long as he's not hurt already from getting clipped. He isn't fantastic there, but he's hung well with guys like Maximo Blanco and
I still tell stories around the fire of his guillotine war with Yeltsin Meza.
Yeah, and Yeltsin Meza, and
who, by the way, out-grappling Yeltsin Meza is pretty good.
Yeah, Yeltsin Meza is not a bad grappler. He went right into Meza's strength and outlasted him there.
Yeah.
So it is fully possible that Tucker's game is under-evolved and Sicilia can take advantage of it. But I just don't... seeing him get cracked and choked out by Gabriel Benitez kind of just puts the stamp on, like, I'm just not... I know Benitez is not bad. This is not a Benitez is bad. But it's just... It shows me that good athletes who have a constructive idea of what they want to do can beat Sam Sicilia.
Yep.
And that makes me willing to take a flyer on Gavin Tucker, even off very minimal tape.
Yeah, all the Jiu-Jitsu fighters seem to have only a rudimentary idea of how to approach a fight. And that approach doesn't seem to change much from one opponent to the next, with the exception of the guillotine battle with Yeltsin Meza, which was, again, also not necessarily inspiring. Impressive that he beat him in that method, but why, if you're Sam Sicilia and you have a chinny Yeltsin Meza in front of you, would you choose to grapple with him?
Yeltsin Meza, who just is a fundamentally bad striker.
Yeah. He's super hittable and is not that durable either. He can be hurt pretty easily by a guy with a good overhand.
Not powerful or aggressive.
No. Yeah. So really, like, why would you ever grapple with him if you have power in both hands like Sam? I have no idea. But he did out-grapple him. So it at least proves that Sam Sicilia's he's got some depth in those phases of the game. I'm going to give you some numbers here because the problem with Gavin Tucker, as you said, which you sort of alluded to, is that there's not a lot of recent footage on him. It's very difficult to know what a whole fight of Gavin Tucker's looks like. And so the trick here is to look at him as if you're an opponent of his on the regional scene, right? You don't have the footage, so you have to learn what you can from the numbers, and you have to take the right things away from the numbers. If you look at Gavin Tucker and you see that he's 9-0 and he's finished pretty much every fight, he's not gone the distance once since his pro debut, then that looks really impressive. But let's compare the records of his competition to those of Sam Sicilia's. Gavin Tucker's opponents win. At the time he fought them, they all had winning records collectively of 45%, which is not good. They're basically all together, they were all losing fighters. Sam Sicilia's opponents win 75% of their bouts, which is a lot better, a whole 30% better. Then you add to that the fact that Sam Sicilia's opponents are not just more successful, but much more experienced than Gavin Tucker's opponents. The combined record of Gavin Tucker's opposition is 27, 22, and 1. The combined record of Sam Sicilia's competition, and this might actually blow you away, is 150, 46, and 3, which is a pretty damn good record for your opponents. I mean, basically what that says is that Sam Sicilia has been fighting very good competition and Gavin Tucker has not.
Yeah.
And so part of the reason that Sam Sicilia hasn't looked great in the UFC is because he's not an amazing fighter, but he's been fighting really good guys. And that experience does pay off in certain ways. He may be losing his confidence a bit, maybe getting a little more desperate, maybe feeling like he needs to get the knockout early or he's going to lose. But it should be much easier to get over that against a really inexperienced guy than against anybody else. So
Sure.
There's absolutely no reason to think that Gavin Tucker can't win this fight. But by the same token, there's no reason to pick him. There just isn't. I mean, you have to see him beat Sam Sicilia before you'll pick him against a guy with Sam Sicilia's level of experience. That's how I feel. You know, even if Sam Sicilia's on the downtrend, Gavin Tucker has not fought anyone good.
Oh yeah, no, I know that. That is a huge that is a very, very worthwhile piece of information, and I think that it is well considered. I'm willing to take a flyer on this. Like, I just feel like, you know what? Screw it. Why not?
Yeah,
Why
it's
not?
It's a chance, and it's a sensible chance. Like, Sam Cecilia's not looked great. Gavin Tucker seems to be on a tear.
And because I'm not doing this on like the idea of like, oh, you know, look at all Gavin Tucker's knockouts and look at like this is a kid on a hot streak. You have to. It's just, do I trust Sam Sicilia to beat the man across from him on any given night?
Yeah. It just, the thing is, it reminds me a little too much of Matt Lopez versus
Ronnie Yaya
versus Hani Yaya. Yeah, like, it's just, I gotta see. I mean, I made the mistake of picking Lopez in that fight, and
I didn't.
Well, good for you. But I got to make there are fighters like Gavin Tucker who come in and have impressive debuts against fighters at Sam Sicilia's level all the time. You know, everybody needs their first big win, and this could be Gavin Tucker's first big win. But I mean,
to your credit on Matt Lopez, though, he did come out and beat Mitch Gagnon right after that.
Yeah. Because Matt Lopez is a good fighter, right? I knew he was good, but I should have waited, really, I feel, for him to see him beat someone who's very experienced and very crafty, even if he's not a super great fighter against elite competition, before I made that pick. So I'm going to play it safe this time. I would not be surprised whatsoever if Gavin Tucker wins, but until I see it, I'm going with Sam Sicilia by decision.
I will say this. Gavin Tucker is the favorite, and that's dumb.
That's basically what I'm saying. Like, there's no reason to favor to say that Gavin Tucker deserves to be the favorite in this fight yet.
No, there's not, based off of the 5 minutes of footage of his entire career, which is very spotty and underwhelming in competition to this point.
Yeah.
Sam Sicilia can absolutely beat Gavin Tucker without any trouble and is probably worth an underdog bet. I don't trust him. I don't like the way he's fighting these days, which is why I'm willing to just go with an upset here, but it should be an upset. It should not be a favorite pick.
Yeah.
I think that's totally silly. That said, would you bet on a over-under for this fight?
No, I mean, I picked it by decision. There's too much to like about the way Gavin Tucker fights and the way he gets his opponents out of there to think he's going to get destroyed. I think he'll probably have a few good moments, but the tricky thing is that, like with Matt Lopez against Hani Yaya, he looked good early, but he didn't know how to fight a guy like Hani Yaya. He didn't know how to approach it and how to manage his energy and how to be smart, because nobody had taught him to be smart yet. There's
a very good chance what this fight looks like is Sam Sicilia versus Aaron Phillips.
Sure, yeah.
If you remember Aaron Phillips, who was a good athlete and a powerful striker who just was totally prepared for a fighter, fights at the UFC level.
Yeah, you need usually as a prospect, you need someone to teach you those hard lessons before you can apply them, and so that's what I'm banking on.
I'm gonna make the stupid pick in hopes of I gotta make up ground on you with this whole like competitive picking thing. Like this is some bullshit.
Ahead of you all year.
Okay, so that's really where my head's at for this. Yeah. Now let's go to the co-main event. Johny Hendricks, Hector Lombard, and take it away.
Well, this fight's kind of a bummer to me. I'm gonna be honest.
See, I don't like either of them enough to be bummed out about it.
Yeah, I don't know if I love Johny, but I really like
Josh Thompson fought Josh Koscheck for me right now. I'd be like, yeah, kick his ass, whoever wins.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. I see that. I don't love Johny necessarily. He can be kind of an annoying dude, but I really like Stephen Wright, his trainer. Stephen Wright's a very knowledgeable guy and just like the nicest dude you'll ever talk to. Ends every conversation with a very earnest God bless, have a blessed day. He's just a super nice guy, and he knows his shit. And I thought he did a lot of really good things with Johny, but it's starting to feel like Johny, even though he's not that old yet, he's only 33. I mean, he should be maybe right at the end of his prime, but a lot of really good fighters can fight through that. It seems like he's kind of in Mike Browne's shoes, where Mike Browne started sort of late, got to the top of the mountain with a ton of great performances, and then right when he got there, it was like, whoop, end of your prime, you're falling off a cliff. And like Mike Browne, Johny Hendricks is a good fighter, very good, very well-rounded. He can do pretty much everything, and he's dangerous like Mike Browne. But like Mike Browne, he just it's been bad for Johny Hendricks ever since he won the title. Really, he's not had an easy fight since winning the title, except for Matt Brown, and he really just had to out wrestle him, which has always been Matt's biggest weakness. So it's I don't know what to expect from Johny Hendricks. He seems at least mentally reinvigorated by the move to middleweight. He has, of course, bragged about getting to eat and drink whatever he wants. So if he misses weight for this fight,
he's at 197 today.
That's reasonable. Like a guy Johnny's size should be able to cut about 10 pounds pretty easily. But
yeah,
he's also, I have a feeling Johny Hendricks has been irresponsibly cutting weight his entire life, going all the way back to the beginning of his wrestling career. He doesn't strike me as a dude who had a lot of self-control as far as his eating habits are concerned.
I have a feeling that he really did things professionally on his way up to the title. And then ever since losing the title, I think maybe he's tried to cut corners financially and has cut out a lot of the smart, he moved away from his camp, gotten rid of his nutritionist, all these things that he's trying to go on the cheap, and it's just been a horrible fit. He's just been like, I know how to do all this stuff myself. I'll do it all myself now, and to save money. And no.
Yeah, there's a bit of that to it. There's also, to me, it just kind of smacks of a guy who's had like 20 years of hard weight cuts. And I mean, wrestling is famously very hard on the body, and it's a miracle that a wrestler of Johny Hendricks' caliber doesn't have more injuries and stuff to speak of, that he's actually still pretty healthy, but the weight cuts affect you in a kind of health way that's harder to see. And it can catch up to you pretty quickly. We've seen it with other fighters, and it seems to be what's happening with Johny Hendricks. I'm torn between thinking that Hector Lombard is a terrible matchup for him or a great matchup for him, and that's kind of Johny Hendricks. I mean, even on his run to the title, Pat pointed this out to me in Heavy Hands, but it was a good reminder. It was basically knockouts or very close fights.
Yep.
That's kind of the book on Johny Hendricks. He's the same guy who can go in there and destroy John Fitch and destroy Martin Kampmann, but then have close fights with an old Josh Koscheck and Mike Pierce, who are good fighters. But
he knocks you out in round 1 or loses round 3. That's always been how Johny Hendricks fights.
Yeah, or if you're really game, it'll just be back and forth the whole time if he doesn't get that early knockout. But he's end of fights, he's classically lost the last round. Yeah, definitely. Going all the way back to that first loss against Rick Story.
And going to, both fights with Robbie Lawler.
Yep. So who knows? if Johny Hendricks is really deteriorating or if his style just doesn't maybe work that well against people who know to look out for his left hand. And there's also maybe a feeling that by learning to be a little more technical and more precise with his punching, learning to jab and learning to move his feet and learning to set up kicks, that maybe he doesn't have the same barreling forward energy he needs to get the knockouts that he did early in his career. He's maybe a little too technical now. Like Manny Pacquiao stopped knocking people out at a certain point as well. Maybe some guys need to be a little wild to be that dangerous. And Hector Lombard is chinny now in a way that he never has been before. And he doesn't throw a lot of volume, has been famously gun shy in the UFC. So those are good signs for Johny Hendricks. But also Hector Lombard's a very strong dude. Yeah. And he's got ironclad takedown defense and also just very good takedowns of his own. And Johny Hendricks, when he tries to wrestle people, has not really ever been that effective in MMA. It's always been kind of a fallback thing. He's been good in the clinch, but his takedowns have never really materialized the way you would expect them to for someone who is legitimately one of the best NCAA wrestlers ever. So yeah, it's a fight that's just like two guys who feel like they're at the end of their career desperately trying to get another win. And I'm going to go with Johny. I think volume really is the answer for him in this fight. Just the fact that he does throw a good output of punches in most fights. When he chooses to strike, he puts out volume, and Hector Lombard never does. So yeah, I'm going to go with Johny, but again, like if Johny wants to wrestle and he can't get takedowns, he gets thrown on his back. If he walks into a big counter shot, there are a lot of things that can go wrong for him in this fight.
I'm going to go with Hector Lombard. And the big reason here is that Hector Lombard, even when he's losing, he still has incredibly dangerous moments where he nearly finishes people.
Yep.
And Hendricks, now that he's losing, seems to have lost all the danger as well. Like, he just, he's gotten more safe in his game plans of going with more wrestling and trying to be more controlling. He's not coming close to knocking people out anymore. And without that, I think he can't. I don't think he can control Lombard enough to institute a control-based win.
He needs to outstrike him to beat him.
Yeah, and I don't trust that to happen at this point. And I don't trust him to show up in shape anymore. I think that, like I say, I think he's been cutting corners a lot lately. It feels like, and I think I don't think he knows that that's the problem.
Sure. I think maybe he just doesn't enjoy fighting as much as he used to.
Yeah.
I mean, he got to the top and then it fell away from him. And now it's like, I don't know. That's part of the weight cutting. Like, I think it just doesn't feel fulfilled going through hard training camps anymore.
Yeah. Cause I mean, that Rogan was even talking about in Hendricks Magny fight before, like he was saying that Hendricks was like training 4 days a week and working out once a day.
He said he was training twice a day now that he doesn't have to do the weight cut. So maybe, again, I'm hoping he's reinvigorated. But
I don't trust it. Like I just don't trust his ability to. I think that he thinks it's all a matter of like he thinks he's lazy, and he's like, oh, I've got lazy, and that's the problem. And I just need to like not get lazy. It's like, no, you actually probably need to really invest in a better camp and a nutritionist again, and like actually do a lot of the things that you did when you were on the grind to becoming champ.
Yeah.
And without those things, you're just not like, it doesn't matter how motivated you feel. You're not going to be able to you're not going to show up, right?
He's got a very wrestler's mindset. He's a grinder. It's like hard work and you will reap the rewards. I don't think maybe Johny, to your point, has put it together that it wasn't just because he worked so hard when he was a wrestler that he was so good. It's because he was at one of the best wrestling schools in the world.
Yeah.
He was an amazing wrestling team. So
like if he misses weight by 5 pounds,
oh my God,
it'll probably be because he didn't cut weight right. Like he's at 197 and people are like, oh my God, how can you be that? It's like, that's a reasonable goal for a proper weight cut.
If you're eating the right kind of foods. And
if you don't hit it, then it's probably because you're not thinking about how to cut weight. You're just like, oh, whatever. I hit my right numbers, so I'm just going to be able to cut the weight. and then you'll be sitting in a sauna, and suddenly your body will shut down. You'll be like, oh, whoops. I guess I should have actually had somebody there trying to help me cut weight right.
Yeah, like you should be cutting carbs and sodium, and there's still certain things. Even if you're eating plentifully, you still got to eat right.
Yeah, and it just seems like he's,
just eating burgers and fries.
Well, not even just eating burgers and fries, but he's just not targeting how to approach it right. Yeah. His approach is just, I need to hit the numbers, and it's just, no, you need to actually take a proper approach to your nutrition and to your camp to be a good fighter in good shape.
This is all speculation, of course,
it's
to
all
a certain extent, but you can judge by what we've seen we've seen a lot of Johny Hendricks now, so we can kind of make some guesses.
And we've heard so many times about fighters talking about being motivated and being back in shape and doing things right this time.
We've seen Johny come in tremendous shape before, and it hasn't necessarily helped. Like looking really lean and in shape, and it's still things go wrong. There's something wrong in the way he's approaching this.
I don't think anything about Hector Lombard's approach to fighting and camps and training and nutrition and all that has changed an iota since he started MMA. And his physical abilities have declined. He's got less cardio. He's got less chin than he used to, but he's still showing up the exact same fighter. Going through, like, he's in a process that has worked for him for years, and it will still work for him in getting him into the fight the way he needs to be.
You never have to think about, did Hector Lombard prepare correctly?
Yeah. So, maybe you have to think about, is he too big a prick in the gym to get training partners? But
they should just match. Hector Lombard should just be training with Rick Story. I mean, they're two famous gym bullies. They would just destroy each other, and no one else would ever have to fear them again.
That's right. All right. That brings us to the odds on that fight. Hector Lombard is the favorite, opening at -120, now to -146. Hendricks, the underdog, -120, now to +121. I think these odds are about right. I think Lombard should be the favorite. I don't know that I would bet anywhere on this fight for these two dudes right now where they are in their careers. Let's see. Under 1.5 is +175. So you might take that, but if Hendricks still doesn't get knocked out much, and Lombard still has problems, he can hurt guys, but he's gotten more and more trouble finishing them when he's hurt them. And after early rounds, he's never been a great finisher. So this could drag into a 15-minute slog of a grind with two dudes who are not, Lombard gassed and Hendricks out of shape and just trying to wear on each other or watch each other. So
yeah, I wouldn't bet on this fight.
No. That brings us to our main event, Derrick Lewis, Travis Browne. And I'm picking Derrick Lewis, and I'm mostly doing it because I think that the Travis Browne who showed up against Fabricio Werdum represents a fighter who is so out of touch with how to win a fight at this point that I don't really think it matters that he's a better wrestler than Derrick Lewis. I don't think it matters that he's tough, and I don't think it matters that he hits hard. Like, Fabricio Werdum beat him in the most awful, clowny, unstructured, terrible display of MMA that he could put on, and Travis Browne just kind of watched and was like, oh, I don't know. I might as well.
I will send Derrick Lewis $100 if he starts this fight the same way Fabricio Werdum started that fight, with a flying side kick to the chest.
It was just, Fabricio Werdum just came out like, I don't know. I'll just
totally fucked him out in that whole fight. He literally just went in there and was like, I don't care. I'm just going to have fun. And he easily beat Travis Browne doing that.
Easily.
Almost more easily than the last time, because last time Travis Browne hurt him once.
Yeah, it was. And even when Werdum kind of got tired late and just turned it into like a more structured fight slightly, he beat Travis Browne easily that way too.
Yeah.
Browne just doesn't look like he has any clue what he wants to do. And frankly, his top grit game, when he gets people down, is all about hurting them and hurting them badly and quickly. And he can do that. Lewis has, doesn't have the best chin in the world, but Lewis is reasonably decent at keeping himself somewhat defensively sound and very good at getting up when he can. And I think if Browne gives him space on the ground to try and unload punches, Lewis will probably be able to get up. And then it's just back to range. And I think that Lewis is a lot more sure of what he wants to do, even if he's changed some of that lately. Like, even if he's at odds with this weird being patient and throwing and being overly patient, and I don't know. I trust Lewis more to land the big shots he needs to keep this fight to win this fight.
It's weird because you have two guys here who on the surface you might think are kind of similar because they both spend a lot of time not doing much. But it all comes down to the rationale behind it. Travis Browne has somewhat improved his punching mechanics under Edmond Tarverdyan, but everything else that used to make him a really good fighter, like this idea of how to game plan and how to approach an opponent and where they're vulnerable, it's gone away. Travis Browne is now mostly a counterpuncher who doesn't really seem to know how to make the other guy walk into his counters. So it's got to be a lesser level of opposition or a big stroke of luck for him to land that shot. And he is powerful. He's got good speed in his hands. Again, he throws some decent punches, got a good uppercut, stuff like that. But you kind of need to give him the fight he wants. And I'm not sure he necessarily knows what fight he wants. And then the difference for Derrick Lewis is that his style, while, again, he doesn't do a lot, is totally rational for what he does best. It's a bit of a gambit, I guess, because he gives away rounds. I mean, he gave away like 3 rounds to Shamil Abdurakhimov, but you saw what happened to Shamil Abdurakhimov. The thing with Derrick Lewis is that he literally just needs one shot. And even if it doesn't knock you out, it's going to dramatically change the tone of that round.
Also, he broke both of Shamil's arms in that fight.
Yeah, he's a monster. He's the most powerful hitter in the heavyweight division. And he knows it. He goes into fights, he knows it. So where Travis Browne is aimless, his style is the product of aimlessness as far as I see it. Derrick Lewis's similar style is the product of single-mindedness.
Yeah.
He knows what he needs to do to win a fight. And that's perfect for him because Lewis has spoken in the past about not being the most confident guy in the world in the cage, about not necessarily loving the action of fighting. And you could see in his older fights that he would respond to that by kind of going nuts. If he got taken down, he would panic. He would try to scramble free and get, beaten up or hurt or waste a lot of energy is the biggest problem for him. If he got hit on the feet, he would trade punches, plant his feet and swing, which isn't great because he's kind of a glass cannon. Now everything is just wait and see, wait and see, wait and see. He gets taken down. He's like not a current Anderson Silva, but he's like a latter day Anderson Silva with way more power and way less technique. But it makes sense. Anderson Silva was a guy who, if he got that one moment, almost every time Anderson Silva hurt somebody, it would be the end of the fight.
Anderson Silva also, when in his younger days, tended to never give away rounds, actually give away.
No, that's why I say like a latter day. When Anderson started to slow down after about 2008 and had to cultivate a new style to keep himself effective, that's Derrick Lewis now. He gets taken down. He does what Anderson did in the second fight with Chael. He literally just closes his eyes and holds on to the other guy. And he's like, okay. He's like he's meditating when he's taken down. Because he's like, there's no point in me going nuts and wasting my energy because there's still round 2, 3, 4, and 5. I can knock this dude out then. So I'll wait. I'll keep the knockout power in my body. And I will maybe look for an opening to bench press this dude off of me at some point. But it's never... Even without a ton of grappling skill, it's never a big waste of energy. Derrick Lewis is a lot more smart with how he fights these days. And Travis Browne is, again, aimless. So while there is a very sizable chance that Travis Browne could take Derrick Lewis down and beat him up from top position, because he's got some good takedowns. And
he does.
Great ground and pound. There's also a pretty good chance Derrick Lewis could do that to him. And Derrick Lewis, as you said, pretty good at surviving. And also the problem for a guy like Browne who wants those counters is Derrick Lewis, is kind of a hard guy to fight if you want to counter, because he doesn't give you a lot of things to get used to. You know, sometimes guys who come in and they throw the same 1-2 10 times in a row, you're like, okay, I know what their jab cross looks like. I've seen enough of it. I have a pool of data to draw from. Derrick Lewis, it's like, what?
There's not many coaches out there who train how to counter swinging and banging.
No, but it's also just like one shot every 2 minutes. And it's a big, fast shot, and he's got a decent selection of strikes. So how do you prepare for it? You got to get really lucky nowadays to catch Derrick Lewis on the way in. So, yeah, I think Derrick Lewis, by the way, I want to be the bearer of bad news here. A lot of people, like on my Sherdog preview and elsewhere, are like, so much potential in this fight. And yes, that's true, but it could also be a really, really slow fight. I do not have high hopes for this one, because
if Travis Browne doesn't hurt Derrick Lewis in the first 5 minutes, then Travis Browne could slow way down, and Derrick Lewis could stay slow.
Yep.
And we could just get 25 minutes of two heavyweights kind of testing each other. We could get the Gonzaga-Iraqian fight.
Yes. Yeah. The highlight, of course, will be that at least we'll get an amazing post-fight interview from Derrick Lewis if he wins. But
even if he loses, he's probably going to get interviewed. So.
Yeah, right. I mean, Derrick Lewis is the man. I mean, anytime he takes the mic, he's like Mark Hunt, where he's like not charismatic, and it makes him charismatic. You know, you just love him. It's like he's not comfortable. He's not confident. He just says, shit, fuck what y'all talking about. Swinging and banging, shit. And that's like the whole post-fight interview. And it's like, yay, Derrick Lewis. So I'm looking forward to that at least, but I don't have high hopes for this fight.
All right. Derrick Lewis opened at -115. He's now -118. The line dropped down to like -133 and has been slowly climbing back towards where it opened. Travis Browne opened at -125. He's now at -105. Line moved up into the +110 range and is now slipping back into favorite status. Don't bet on heavyweight fights, folks. This fight could be, and there's no reason that Browne can't knock Lewis out and Lewis can't knock Browne out, and there's no reason that either of them couldn't win the worst, ugliest decision possible.
It could be literally anything except a submission win.
Yeah.
That's it.
Basically. All right. On that note, I got another Vivisection to do, so I'm going to get out of here. Thanks, everyone, for tuning in. You can find me on Twitter at TheseNTime. You can find Connor on Twitter at BoxingBush, BUSCH. You can find both of us over on BloodyElbow.com, DOTCOM. Give this video a thumbs up over on YouTube. MMANation.com is our YouTube channel, DOTCOM. Subscribe to that. Both those things help us out a ton, and we'll be back next week for the MMA Depressed Us, I believe. We'll have to round up another 3 terrible fights and put ourselves through it because there's no UFC event next week. So join us all for that, and you can find me in just a few minutes right back here talking Matt Mitrione versus Fedor Emelianenko at Bellator 172. So thanks everyone for tuning in, and I will see you all next time.